But like I said, once again, when we in this congregation here, we're teaching these laws, statutes, judgments, and commandments to let you know who you are and how we end up in this place here for the past 400 years, or close to it. Today, I want to talk about these feast days. A couple years ago, I'm going to take this off, okay? A couple years ago on Facebook, we ran a poll, and we were asking people, what day do you keep Passover? And while asking the people on Facebook to get a sample of what was going on, you know, we got 21 different days that people do Passover. Hebrews. 21 different days. Let me ask you guys, go ahead and mute your phone. Go ahead and mute your phone. I'll give you a minute to do that. Go ahead and mute your phone. 21 different days doing Passover. And the question is, can they all be right? There has to be at least one out of the 21 that's right. And the other 20, they're not right. But at the same time, everybody's convinced in their mind that this is the way we should do Passover. And I found out that a lot of people don't take the time to go and study other people's doctrine. We automatically assume that what we have is truth. Not knowing it could be y'all trying to make or bring something to your attention that maybe you should look at is that it may be true. And that's why we have to go and look at all these different ways in which people celebrate the New Year as well as bringing in the Passover. But more specifically, I want to talk about the feast days in general. I want to talk about the feast days in general. And I always ask whenever I do this lesson, we normally do it during the time of Passover when they come in, but we're about 2 or 3 weeks out. And I know some of you say, well, 2 or 3 weeks out, how can that be? We're all doing something different. But I always go over these feast days so people can get a better understanding of how they work, how they made up, what's the makeup, what we should do and what we shouldn't do on those days. Give them a chance to set it up. It was kind of warning here. You know, typically I ask people, how many feast days are there? And as a Hebrew, you should automatically know this. How many feast days are there?
7.
Say it again.
7.
7. As Hebrew, you should know this. Like the back of your hand, you should know this. But I want to talk about it. Does anybody know what are the feast days for? What's the purpose? They're Yah's plan of salvation. Yah's plan of salvation to the Hebrews first, the Israelites first, and then to the nations. See, once you understand the feast days, and that they're the plan of salvation, and that they are made up of, they're composed of redemption, reconciliation, and restoration, then all the tough things in the book, such as Almighty so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, he who believes shall not perish but shall have everlasting life. Once you understand redemption, reconciliation, and restoration, you see what that means. Once you understand redemption, reconciliation, restoration, you understand what Yahuwah said, behold, the Lamb of Almighty who takes away the sin of the world. If you don't, you answer the question, well, how did he take away the sins of the world and sin is still here today? But if you understand the plan of salvation through these feast days, we're going to go through those today. If you understand this plan of salvation, then you begin to understand these difficult things that are in the book that a lot of people can't explain, but you'll be able to explain it because you understand the plan of salvation. Now, I'd like to start off. We're going to go to Leviticus chapter 23. That was the Torah reading today. But I want to go through Leviticus 23. And while he's pulling it up and getting ready to go through this, there's a couple things I want to go over. Typically, people say that there's with the feast days, there are the spring feast days, and there's the fall feast days, right? Spring feast days, that's a lack of a better term. Spring feast days and the fall feast days. Now here's something I want you to notice as we get ready to go to Leviticus chapter 23. The spring feast days, you notice in the Tanakh, or what they call the Old Testament, they are not called Sabbaths. Even though they are similar to Sabbath, they are not called Sabbath. In fact, I challenge you to go to the Tanakh and see if you can find where unleavened bread is called Sabbath. Where the first day, the seventh day, and even Pentecost, see if they're called Sabbath. They are not called Sabbaths. I want everybody to get that. The spring feast days are not called Sabbaths. Now, when you get to the New Testament, there's an intermingling of that, but you cannot find that in the Old Testament. Everybody got that? Now, the fall feast days, they are called Sabbaths. The correct word is Sabbatum. Sabbatum, that's Strong's number H7677. You may want to write that down. Strong's H7677. Now, the Day of Atonement and the seventh day Sabbath, they're called Sabbaths also, but their number is Strong's number H7676. Those are the only two that carry the designation H7676. Now, let me go over this again. The spring feast days are not called Sabbaths. You cannot find that in the Old Testament. The spring feast days are not called Sabbaths. The fall feast days are referred to as Sabbaths. Is that okay with everybody? Before we go on.
Yeah.
Now, when we get to the point where it said, "Verily my Sabbaths shall you keep, it shall be a sign between me and my people throughout all generations," what is he talking about?
Fall Sabbath, right?
The fall Sabbath as well as the seventh day Sabbath. Now we have to keep this in mind as we get ready to go through Leviticus chapter 23. Okay? Keep this in mind as we go through Leviticus chapter 23. Now, we also know during the feast days there are actually three harvests that take place in the feast days. The first harvest is what? The barley harvest. The second harvest is what? The wheat harvest. Now those two harvests occur within the springtime. And then in the fall time we have what harvest? You should know this. The grape or the fruit harvest, what occurs in the fall. Now, if we go through 23, Leviticus 23, we're going to see these. We're going to see these take place and how it plays out. And as we go through these, we're also going to see redemption, reconciliation, restoration. Now, let me say this before we get into it. I'm going to define those words for you. Redemption is basically, it's a gift. Ephesians said we're saved by faith. We're saved by grace through faith, not of works. That's in men shall boast, but we ought to do good works, right? So we see redemption is the gift. Reconciliation comes when we discover who we are and discover why we're in the predicament that we're in. We discover that we need to keep these laws, statutes, judgments, and commandments. And once we start doing that, we become reconciled. And once we're reconciled, we're restored. Yes. We're restored back to what? The promises that were given to us, Abraham and to Israel. Yes, hallelujah. Hallelujah. Now let me define these three words before we go any further, because I think these three words are the underlying theme of the whole book. These three words, redemption, reconciliation, restoration, are the underlying principle behind the book. See, if you understand this, you can understand why there had to be a Mashiach. Come on. Right? If you understand redemption, reconciliation, and restoration. Let me explain what redemption is. And this is not from the scripture, but just a basic dictionary definition. Redemption is the action of saving or being saved from sin, error, or evil. The action of regaining or gaining possession of something in exchange for payment or clearing of a debt. Remember, Paul said the wages of sin is death. When we go to Colossians chapter 2, he said the handwriting of ordinances that were against us. What was against us? The death penalty. That was against us. He took it out of the way, nailed it to the cross. They said the Mashiach came to redeem us from what? The curse of the law. What is the curse of the law? Death. Now, did he redeem us from sin? Not at all, because sin still exists today. I can choose to sin if I want to today. So he didn't do away with sin. When John said, "Behold, the Lamb of Yahweh take away the sin of the world," that's a true statement, but it's prophetic. Something in the future. when he throws death into the lake of fire. Therefore, there's no more penalty. A sin has to be gone too, right? It has to be. But now, let me define reconciliation. Reconciliation is the restoration of friendly relationships, the action of making one view of belief compatible with the other. See, at one point, Israel, even Adam, he was in right standing with the Most High. Even Israel, when they came out, for the time being, they were in right standing and right relationship with the Most High, but they sinned. So once they sin, they need to be, from that point forward, they need to be reconciled.
That's right.
They need to be reconciled back to the Most High. The last thing is, once reconciliation is obtained, is restoration. Now, restoration is the action of returning something to a former owner. Israel has returned to Yahweh. A place or condition, the return of a hereditary monarch to a throne, a head of state to the government, or a regime to power. See, in Exodus 19, he said, Israel, you shall become a nation of priests. It never happened. Israel never became a nation of priests, but they will. Israel never became a nation of priests because of sin. Because of sin, Israel never became a nation of priests. But through the restoration process, Israel will become that in which Most High promised. So these three things I want you to remember, the underlying theme of the feast days, which is Yah's plan of salvation. That's redemption, reconciliation, restoration. Now, knowing this, now we can go to Leviticus chapter 23. We're going to start at verse 1.
And Yah spake unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto the children of Yasharal, and say unto them concerning the feast of Yah, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my feasts. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest, and holy convocation ye shall do no work therein. It is the Shabbat of Yah in all your dwellings. These are the feasts of Yah, even set apart convocations which you shall proclaim in their seasons.
Hold on right there. Now, here's something I want you to notice. People in the congregation here, you already know this. You know that verse 1 and verse 4 are basically the same. You guys knew this, right? Verse 1 and verse 4 are virtually the same. Why is that? Verse 1 and verse 4 are the same. Let me explain it to you, those that don't know. Verse 1, he said, These are my feasts, you shall proclaim in your season. Verse 4 virtually says the same thing, but in between those two, he's talking about what? The Sabbath. That is what is called a resumptive, repeating narrative. That's like the Most High is speaking. I'm going off on a tangent, talking about the Sabbath, and I'm going to come back into the text. Or the Most High is speaking, I'm writing a footnote into the text, and then I'm going to come back to verse 4 and repeat it and continue on. That is called a repeating, resumptive repeating narrative. Remember that. Now, why is this important? What he's trying to say is that I'm going to talk to you about the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a feast day, but it's not associated with the feast day that will follow after verse 4. The Sabbath is a feast day, but it's not governed by the moon, which will start the feast days in verse 4. This is very important, because if you don't, you will start putting the Sabbath as being governed by the moon. And we know there are people that actually do that. So remember that a resumptive repeating narrative here, the first verse and the fourth verse are virtually the same. The Sabbath is inserted in between, and then when we get to the fourth verse and start reading on, we actually start talking about the feast days that are governed by the moon. All right, let's go on. Verse 5.
In the 14th day of the first month at even.
Now that should be in between the evenings. King James put the word at evening in there. Go ahead.
Is Yah's Passover. And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto Yah. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread.
All right, let's go ahead and stop there. What was the purpose of Passover? You know, we always say it doesn't matter whether you were righteous or unrighteous, as long as you had the blood on the doorpost and you believe that death would pass over you. It didn't matter whether you were right or wrong.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
But because you had the blood on the doorpost, you were automatically redeemed from death. That's the gift. That's the gift. Let's go on.
And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto Yah. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. And the first day ye shall have a set apart convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. But you shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yah 7 days. And the 7th day is a set apart convocation. You shall do no servile work therein.
All right, let's stop right there. Now, what happened when they came out from under that blood of the doorpost? They were automatically free from death, right? But they had to go through another process. Unleavened bread is symbolic of what? Getting the sin out. But you can't get the sin out if you don't know what the law, statute, judgment, and commandments are, right? So there's a process where we have to learn the law, statute, judgment, and commandment. And that's how we get the unleavened bread. Unleavened bread is getting the sin out, right? Go ahead. Before we go on, these are also called holy convocation or set-apart convocation, which means we have to gather for the purpose of reading Torah. Now, there's some people that say we shouldn't gather. We can't because we're not in the land. But the book doesn't say that. The book said these are set-apart gatherings. Go ahead.
And Yah spake unto Moshe, saying, speaking to the children of Yasharal, and saying unto them, when you be come into the land which I give unto you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, then you shall bring the sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest unto the priests.
Hold on. When will this happen? When we get into the land. When we get into the land, you shall bring a sheaf of the wave offering unto the priest. Go ahead.
And you shall wave the sheaf before Yah to be accepted for you on the morrow after the Shabbat. The priest shall wave it.
Okay.
And you shall offer that day when you wave the sheaf an eland without blemish.
Hold on, let's stop right there. Verse 11 said, the priest, he shall wave the sheaf before Yah to be accepted for you on the morrow after the Sabbath. The priest shall wave it. Now verse 12 says, and you shall offer. Is it talking about the priest or is it talking about you? You shall offer in that day when you wave the sheaf a he lamb without blemish of the first year after a burnt offering unto Yah. So we see two things going here, two events, one passage. The priest is waving the sheep that you brought to him, and now you are doing something. Let's go ahead.
And the meat offering thereof shall be 2/10 deals of fine flour mingled with oil, an offering made by fire unto Yah for a sweet savor. And the drink offering thereof shall be of wine, the 4th part of a hin. And ye shall eat neither bread, nor parched corn, nor green ears, until the selfsame day that you have brought an offering unto your Elohim. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings.
Now let's stop here for a moment. Now during the days of unleavened bread, 7 days, right? He said we should start to eat unleavened bread for 7 days, right? But we get to this portion here, it says you should eat neither bread. How can I do that? You told me to eat bread for 7 days. Now you tell me to eat no bread. How can that be? How can that be? Unless there are two separate events. Unless one starts after the other. They can't start at the same time. Because I'm violating the commandment. He said for me to eat unleavened bread for 7 days, now you tell me to eat no bread until I bring this offering. How can I do that if I'm right in the middle of unleavened bread and now I'm not supposed to eat any bread?
No.
Let's go ahead. Something to think about.
And ye shall count unto you from the morrow after the Shabbat, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Shabbats shall be complete.
Let's stop right there. Now you know he mentioned the word Shabbat. If he called the spring feast day Shabbat, then we started our count. Some people start their count to Pentecost after the first day of unleavened bread. That's because you call unleavened bread a Sabbath. Unleavened bread is not a Sabbath. It's not called a Sabbath anywhere in the Torah, anywhere in the Tanakh. Go ahead.
Even unto the morrow after the 7th Shabbat shall you number 50 days, and ye shall offer a new meat offering unto Yah.
Now let me ask you this. If Passover occurs on a Wednesday, first day of unleavened bread occurs on a Thursday, when should I start my count of Pentecost? says? The book says Sabbath. There's only two words that carry the name Sabbath. H7676, that's Atonement and the seventh day Sabbath. So I'm starting my count when? Tomorrow, on tomorrow after the seventh day Sabbath. So Passover occurs on Wednesday, and first day unleavened bread is on Thursday. Then I start my count to Pentecost. That's not right. That's not right. Is it? The priests come to do the wave sheet offering, right? On the morrow after the Sabbath. That would be doing unleavened bread, right? But when I start my count to Pentecost? The following Shabbat. Sunday after the following Shabbat. Because he said, look, you should eat unleavened bread for 7 days, right? Then he said, you should eat no bread until you brought this offering, right? How can that be? Am I supposed to not eat bread or eat bread or what? So what he's saying is, look, I start my count, the priest, and the wave offering is during the week that unleavened bread. And then after that, I start my count. Okay, go ahead.
You shall bring out of your habitations 2 wave loaves of 2/10 deals. They shall be of fine flour, they shall be baked with leaven. They are the first fruits unto Yah. And ye shall offer with the bread 7 lambs without blemish of the first year, and 1 young bullock, and 2 rams. They shall be for a burnt offering unto Yah with their meat offering and their drink offerings, even an offering made by fire of sweet savor unto Yah.
Hallelujah. Keep going.
Then you shall sacrifice 1 kid of the goats for a sin offering, and 2 lambs of the first year for a sacrifice of peace offerings. And the priest shall wave them with the bread of the first fruits for a wave offering before Yah with the 2 lambs. They shall be set apart to Yah for the priest. And ye shall proclaim on the selfsame day that it may be a set apart convocation unto you. You shall do no servile work therein. It shall be a statute forever in all your dwellings throughout your generations.
So Shavuot is a time where we do no servile work. It's mean labor's work. I don't go to my job or anything like that, okay? All right, go ahead.
And when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not make clean riddance of the corners of your field when you reapest. Neither shall you gather any gleaning of your harvest. You shall leave them unto the poor and to the stranger. I am Yah your Elohim. And Yah spake unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto the children of Yasharal, saying, In the 7th month, in the first day of the month, shall you have a Shabbat, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, a set-apart convocation.
Let's hold on right there. Now, let's go back. These spring feast days are relating to Israel. These spring feast days are relating to Israel. All right? We have the gift. The Mashiach has redeemed us from the curse of the law.
Come on now.
He's saved us, spared us from death, even though we deserved it.
Hallelujah.
All right? Then we go to unleavened bread, which means we're getting the sin out of the life, which means we get the sin out because we understand the law, statute, judgments, and commandments. There's a way you can get sin out if you do not understand the law, statute, judgment, and commandments. And then after that, we go to Pentecost. Pentecost is indicative of what? The receiving of the Ruach.
Yes.
See, once we cleaned up, we see Paul say Israel, when they went through that Red Sea, they were baptized, were immersed, right? They were cleaned up, and then we're supposed to receive His Spirit. This is the sole purpose of the spring feast days, only relating to Israel and not the world. Now we're getting into the fall feast days. Let's go ahead and read that again about the Feast of Trumpets, the Memorial of Trumpets, I'm sorry.
And Yah spake unto Moshe, saying, Also on the 10th day of this 7th month, there should be a...
Yeah, 27.
There, 23. Because you want to read that again, right?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, we're 23.
And Yah spake unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto the children of Yasharal, saying, In the 7th month, in the first day of the month, shall you have a Shabbat, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, a set-apart convocation.
This is what? A set-apart convocation, which means we have to come together. Now, I know that some people say because He told Israel to stay in their own places, that we're not to go out in fellowship. But, we have to understand, we talk about this all the time, we have to understand the difference between situational precepts versus universal precept. Temporal precept versus permanent precepts. See, everything in the law doesn't apply to you.
Lord.
Everything that in the law doesn't. There's some things in the law that doesn't apply to you because you're not in the land,
Yep.
because you don't have a priesthood.
No temple.
What else? You don't have a temple.
No
It's
sacrifice.
our job to go and figure out which one do apply and which one don't. And I need to tell you this: we're living in a land that's perpetually unclean. So we can't become dogmatic about some things.
That's right. That's right.
And I know sometimes you say women, you on your cycle and all that stuff like that, and you have some congregation that asks, are you on your cycle? But then again, we deal with people day to day.
That are not Israelites.
Not Israelite, but you don't complain about them because you're getting a paycheck.
That's right. Come on now.
You don't complain about them because you're getting a paycheck. But then again, you come amongst us,
Come on. Come on now.
Yeah.
you're on your cycle. Did you touch that doorknob? Are you on your cycle when you're sitting there? And see, we become very dogmatic, not realizing we're not in our land. We don't have a temple, we don't have a priesthood, so everything in the law does not apply to you. But we have to work diligently to find out what applies to us. And I can tell you now, the 10 words and 10 sayings, they apply.
Thank you.
They apply. Now there's some other things that also apply. These feast days, they apply. Why? Because they're Yah's plan of salvation. That's why they apply. The feast days are talking about Israel. It's the way Yah is going to what? Redeem you. How Yah is going to reconcile you. How Yah is going to restore you.
Come on now.
Now, when we get to the fall feast day, the Feast of Trumpets, look at what's going to happen.
That's right.
The blowing of the trumpet to call Israel back together. The blowing of the trumpet to indicate that the Mashiach is coming.
Hallelujah.
All applying to Israel. Now, let's go to the next feast day.
And ye shall do no servile work therein, but ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yah. And Yah spake unto Moshe, saying, also on the 10th day of this 7th month, there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be a set apart convocation unto you, and you shall afflict your souls, and offer an offering made by fire unto Yah.
Let's go ahead and stop right there. Now, in this process we're talking about, this salvation process, which consists of what? Redemption, reconciliation, and restoration. When we get to the Day of Atonement, now you're going to see the difference between atonement and Passover. Passover is part of the redemptive process, but atonement is at the end of the reconciliation process. All of Israel's sin atoned for. I'm going to put my laws in their heart and in their mind that they may do them. And once you reach that point, now it's time for Israel to be restored. Keep going.
And ye shall do no work in that same day, for it is a day of atonement, to make an atonement for you before Yah your Elohim. For whatsoever soul it be that shall not be afflicted in that same day, he shall be cut off from among his people. And whatsoever soul it be that doeth any work in that same day, the same soul will I destroy from among his people. Ye shall do no manner of work. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings.
Hallelujah.
It shall be unto you a Shabbat of rest, and you shall afflict your souls. In the 9th day of the month at even, from even unto even, shall you celebrate your Shabbat.
Keep going.
And Yah spake unto Moses, saying, speaking to the children of Yasharal, saying, the 15th day of this 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles, for 7 days unto Yah. On the first day shall be a set apart convocation, ye shall do no servile work therein. 7 days ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yah. On the 8th day shall be a set apart convocation unto you, and ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yah. It is a solemn assembly, and ye shall do no servile work therein.
Hold on before you go to 37. Now, when we get to Tabernacle, the Mashiach at this time will come and dwell with Israel. Right? And also at this time, he's going to start dealing with the nations. Almighty so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, and he who believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. But there's an order.
Come on.
Amos chapter 3, verse 1 and 2. Let's go there. Amos chapter 3, verse 1 and 2. Go ahead and read it. Amos chapter 3, verse 1 and 2. When we get to Tabernacles, now we get ready to deal with the nations. He does love everybody, but there's an order. Go ahead.
Hear this word that Yah has spoken against you, O children of Yasharal, against the whole family which I brought up from the land of Mitzrayim, saying, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore I will punish you for all your iniquities.
Hallelujah. So we see, of all the families of the earth, Israel, the only one that are known by the Most High. This is why they say in Exodus chapter 4, verse 22, Israel is my firstborn son. What that means is he's the firstborn of the nations. He only dealing with Israel first. And you know, when we go back to Exodus chapter 19, it says that Israel was a nation, was supposed to be a nation of priests. What's the job of the priest? Minister to the Most High, but at the same time, minister to what? The people, teach the people. So Israel's job, which was the same job that Adam had in the beginning, to minister to the people. He chose Adam. Everything came through that line. He chose Israel. Israel became the family that he had chosen. This is why Paul said in Romans chapter 9, verse 5, that everything, the adoption, the law, statute, judgment, commandment, were all given to Israel. Not the nations, but the nations will get it when? During Tabernacles, when he comes to dwell with man, he started to rule the nation with what? A rod of iron. Let's go to Leviticus, not Leviticus, Zechariah chapter 14.
Yes, sir.
Zechariah chapter 14. If you don't have it, you can look up here. Zechariah chapter 14. All right, let's go ahead and restart in verse 1.
Behold, the day of Yah cometh, and your spoil shall be divided in the midst of you. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle.
He's going to gather all the nations together.
And the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Then shall Yah go forth and fight against those nations, as when he fought in the day of battle. And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof toward the east and toward the west, and there shall be a very great valley. And half the mountain shall remove toward the north, and half of it toward the south. And you shall flee to the valley of the mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach unto Azal. You shall flee, like as you fled from before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Yehuda, and Yah, my Elohim, shall come, and all the saints with you.
Hold up now. He's coming with what? All the saints are going to be with him. That means what? They've been changed. Okay? They've been changed. Now they're going into Jerusalem to do battle. Go ahead.
And it shall come to pass in that day that the light shall not be clear nor dark, but it shall be one day which shall be known to Yah, not day nor night, but it shall come to pass that at evening time it shall be light. And it shall be in that day that living water shall go out from Jerusalem, half of them toward the former sea, and half of them toward the hinder sea. In summer and in winter shall it be. And Yah shall be king over all the earth.
The king of all the earth. Go ahead.
In that day shall there be one Yah, and his name one.
So we see during that time, all these other mighty ones that the nation worship will be done away with. There's only going to be one at this time. Go ahead.
All the land shall be turned as a plain from Geba to Rimmon, south of Jerusalem, and it shall be lifted up and inhabited in her place from Benjamin's gate unto the place of the first gate unto the corner gate, and from the tower of Haniel unto the king's wine presses. And men shall dwell in it, and there shall be no more utter destruction, but Jerusalem shall be safely inhabited.
Go down to verse 16.
And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations,
Now he's dealing with the nations. It shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations shall be what?
which came against Jerusalem, shall even go up from year to year to worship the King, Yah of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles.
Let's stop right there. Why is he only requiring the nations now just to keep the Feast of Tabernacles? The rest of the feast days only apply to Israel. Now he's dealing with the nation, having them to come up to keep the Feast of Tabernacle. But there's also something else I need to add in there. We go to Luke chapter 22. We don't have to go there. But the Mashiach said, it is my desire to eat this Passover with you, but I will not do it again until I do it anew in the kingdom. So we see during that millennial reign, death still presides over man. Man will be still dying. But men, the nation will have to come up from year to year to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. And we don't see any of the other feast days mentioned that they have to keep. But those apply to Israel. Salvation is to the Yahudim first, and then to the Gentiles. And I know some translators say Greek. But salvation is to Israel first. Salvation is to us first, and then to the nations. He's not going to start dealing with the nations until we get to the Feast of Tabernacles.
Come on. Come on.
And then after the Feast of Tabernacles, we have what? The last great day of the great judgment, where every man going to have to give account for everything. Now, this doesn't apply to Israel. We already been resurrected, caught up. It doesn't apply to you. But to those that have not been, then it does apply. So now we see the feast days. All of the feast days are simply Yah's plan of salvation. There's Yah's plan of salvation. I know it's hot in here. There's Yah's plan of salvation. Some of us are hungry. There's Yah's plan of salvation for all of mankind, but there's a particular order.
Take your time.
There's a particular order. The Yahudim first.
Yes.
We got Passover, unleavened bread, Pentecost, dealing with Israel, the reconciliation process. And then when we get to trumpet, he's calling us all together.
Yes.
When we get to atonement, all of our sins now are atoned for.
That's
This
right.
is where we actually be transformed. And then from that point, he's going to tabernacle with us as well as with man or the nations. So we see the whole process in these feast days. So there's no way you can say that we should not be keeping these feast days.
Come on. Come on.
There's no way you should be saying that we should not be keeping these feast days. There's no way you can say that there is no Mashiach. Because these feast days center around him. I think Leviticus 17:11 says what? Life is in the blood, and he's given it to us to atone for our life. And I'll ask this on Facebook, how can a spiritual being, which has no blood, atone for man? He can't. That's why he said in Psalm chapter 40, verse 6, and I know the English translation say something a little bit different. He said, look, I have prepared a body. We see the same thing in Hebrew chapter 10, verse 5. I have prepared a body. And then when we go to Isaiah chapter 53, tell you exactly what's going to happen to this body. And some of us refer to this as a ketubah. The Most High married Israel.
Come on.
By marrying Israel, we be under contract with them. And I always say, we have a prenuptial agreement with them. That even if we break the contract, these curses still gonna follow us. And I think that's what we forgot about. And the reason we forgot because our forefathers, what happened to them, they forgot. And of course, being by them forgetting about these laws, statutes, judgments, and commandments, forgetting about these feast days, forgetting about his Sabbaths, they could no longer pass it on to us. So even though redemption, the Passover, which is coming up, is a gift, you can't take advantage of that gift if you don't know about it. If you don't know about it, even though you've been redeemed, he's done all the work and everything for you, all you have to do is believe. But if you don't know, how can you believe? If you don't know who you are, how can you believe? Mashiach said, these work that I do, you'll do even greater works. And I find that so true today because look at the things we have been doing. Back then, They knew who they were.
Well,
Back then, they knew they had to keep the law, statute, judgment, and commandment. Back then, they knew this, but look what we're faced today. This is a greater work.
Yes.
Our people don't even know who they are. Our people say there is no law now.
Come on, yes.
Now we have to go about convincing them, look, you are the people of the book, you are the children of the book, you are Israel.
Yes.
And we have to walk in these laws, statutes, judgments, and commandments, because you see the curses on us as a whole. And they're going to tell you, no, the law will take away the nail to the cross. We don't have to do that.
Yeah.
We can eat whatever we want to eat. We can call the Most High whatever we want to call him.
Yeah.
At one time, a person said that we can call him what we want.
We'd like to be turned down.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. But we're spending a lot of time trying to convince our people, this is a greater work, trying to convince our people who they are, that they must walk in the laws, statutes, judgment, and commandments. Better yet, we need to let our people know, look, Yah has a plan of salvation for us. This plan of salvation is that they are His feast days. And being that they are His feast days, we'll bring down a bit. They are His feast days, and therefore within the feast days are tied. The feast days are tied to our redemption, reconciliation, and restoration. There is no other way. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. We're going to have an I apologize for the technical difficulty.
It's all good. It's all good.
Hallelujah, Israel. Hallelujah. Now we've come to that part where everyone can participate. Now we do know that we don't take tithes. We all know that, right? We don't have a priesthood, but we do collect the donation or an offering to help pay for the facilities, pay for the technology. Anyone that's a member of any organization knows you pay dues to help finance or further the mission of the organization. That's simply why we're here. So just give as your heart sees need, or as the Most High impresses upon your hearts.
There's no more trouble where I go.
While they take a monetary offering, don't anybody put fruit, grapes, anything like that. We're going to continue this series. Actually, we're going to start talking about these specific days. Next week, we're going to talk about the Sabbath, how to keep it set apart. And I know there's a big debate among Israel, but I think we need to have a conversation on when does the Sabbath begin. We need to talk. We also need to talk about the moon, how we determine that. It's actually in the book. Just if we're not asking the right questions. It's all there. But we need to have that conversation because it's ridiculous when we all come together on the feast days. You ask a question, when is Passover? We get 21 different days. That doesn't make sense among Israel. So that means 20 of us that made the suggestion, we're walking on the curse again, right? Absolutely. And so these are discussions we need to have. Like we had a discussion this morning about Passover. Should we have lamb? Chopped lamb is okay to have chopped lamb. And I would love to see Mr. Hebrew and the Hebrew of Hebrews, Ron Divine Prospect. Those are the names that I've given them. But these brothers, they're heavy in the word. So I would like to have a continued conversation in here early about while we get something to eat. I know it's a little warm in here. We need to find out what's going on with the AC. But nevertheless, as we continue with these, go along the feast day, we talk more specifically about when Passover comes. We're going to talk more specifically about Passover. When unleavened bread comes, we're going to talk more specifically about that. But next week, we actually get into the Sabbath. A lot of people, even though they keep the Sabbath, they have no idea. Well, they call themselves keeping the Sabbath. They don't work, but they have no idea how to keep the Sabbath apart. There are certain things you should do and certain things you should not do. And I typically post on Facebook, when it comes to the Sabbath, look, no buying, no selling, no doing your own pleasure, no speaking your own word. This is supposed to be a day dedicated to the Most High. But we're going to go over that next week, and then the following week we're going to go into when does the Sabbath begin? There's a lot of turn down just a little bit. We have that fixed next week. But when we get to the Sabbath, in the Hebrew community, there's at least 4 different ways in which people keep the Sabbath.
Yeah.
How many of you knew that? There's sunset to sunset, sunrise to sunset, sunrise to sunrise, and then there's a lunar Sabbath.
In the middle of the week, Sabbath. The middle of the week.
Middle of the week. That's 5. So Israel, we are all over the place, and I think what happens when we have healthy dialogue, we say talk, not go back and forth with each other, but have a healthy dialogue on what's what. I think we can make some headway on what we should be doing, when we should be doing, how we should be doing. Nevertheless, I'm going to hold you guys up. I'm going to let them go ahead and close out with prayer. Go ahead, bless you.
If we could all just stand there for a prayer. And normally we say face the east, but it just so happened that the east is actually this way, in this direction. Hallelujah. Father, y'all, we want to thank you for waking us up this morning. And then we want to thank you for waking us up. Because we could be asleep. We could be dead men walking. Just like the rest of our brothers and sisters right now. Have mercy on them, Father, because you have chosen not to awaken them, because we know that you have put the spirit of blindness on them. It is for us to work through you and to do as you would have us to do, so that we can help reunite these dead bones. And Father, we ask that you will please touch every person that's in here right now. We're not just coming in here from Sabbath after Sabbath just to listen to a good sermon, to show each other how much we've read, how much we've researched, how much we've studied, to keep it to ourselves. And there are folks in here that are hurting, Father. There are folks in here that are going through financial problems, health issues, all type of problems that are really individually none of our business, but we know it's your business, so we're just going to leave it on your altar, and we're going to ask that you would provide healing. So please touch our decision making, touch our finances, so that we will learn how to be better stewards of our time. Not just our money and talents, but of our time. So that we can know how to serve you. Now we ask for protection for our brothers and sisters that are scattered throughout the 4 corners of the earth. We want to thank everyone that is here, and those that could not be here, and those that are watching this on live stream. Touch them, Father. Send your Ruach Kodesh to them. And now we ask that you will please touch the food in the hands that prepared it. In your son Yahushua's name we pray. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.